So do you want to explain in your own words for the camera what happened up there?
Yeah. I'll be glad to explain what happened. You know, that's why we normally get waiver release forms signed right there.
Oh, there you go.
Basically what a waiver release says, that no matter how stupid the guide is, he's not responsible for it.
Exactly. So, yep. Well, on the air, I'm signing it for you right now, so don't you have to worry about it. I'm good. I've done this. I've been in that.
Oh yeah, I know you have.
So
give me that.
Yeah.
All right. So we got hung up in the pipeline hole, the Sandy River. It's 1,100 cubes today, which is really bony. And I went to turn the raft into the slot, and what really happened there was that when I went to put my oar down, there was a rock about an inch under the surface that I didn't see, and I couldn't get a grip on the water. So then the tail end of the boat hit a rock and threw me more out of line, and then pretty quick we turned around backwards, and we're going down the river backwards, and we hung up on a cluster of giant boulders. And my faithful partner here, you know, was very much responsible for getting us off. So that's the true story from the guide himself, the guy rowing the boat that missed the turn.
Nice work. Wow. So what are we going to do here? So we got this run.
So the next thing the guide is going to do is the guide is going to get inside this box. He's going to get out the coffee jug, and he's going to pour himself a cup of coffee. Yeah. And if this is an interview, I'm going to sit on this seat because I'm tired from getting the boat off of the rock, which I only did about 1/3 of, honestly. But nobody got hurt. Boat didn't get hurt. No problem.
Yeah.
We're back on the water, and we're ready to go.
There you go.
Our first actual stop of the morning. I came down here last week. There was nobody on the water. You know, as far as I know, there's no boats ahead of us now, but there was a cluster of guys around Dodge Park, you know, so we missed our first spot that I wanted to fish. But we're in a really good place right now, and we're going to have a cup of coffee. Your interviewer is going to talk me into something, and I'm going to pour myself a cup of coffee and relax, and we're just going to get this part of it done.
Nice. Awesome.
We were spade casting with single hand rods and didn't even know we were doing it. I think largely on the influence of your father.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And a guy by the name of Carl Perry was the best caster, best roll caster, best single hand caster in our tribe. And he had actually taken some lessons from your dad, and he was a heck of a fly caster.
Wait, and I missed that. So Carl Perry, because I remember my dad, I always asked him, "Did you spade cast?" And he said, "Yeah, I did a little spade fishing." So you're saying Carl Perry learned?
He didn't bring the spade thing to us, but he was we were spade casting, roll casting, spade casting, live roll casting with single-handed rods.
Oh, single, yeah.
And
gotcha.
You know, and before I blew my elbow up, I ruined the tendons in my elbow. See, otherwise I'd probably still be using this single-hand rod spade casting today. But I was on a tarpon trip and I ruined my right elbow. And so the two-hand fly rod really brought me back into the fly fishing game.
That's amazing. That is a pretty cool story. I was going to say.
But what I was going to say was that the Sandy River Spade Clave and having all of these great instructors show up to do programs and stuff, the Sandy River Spade Clave, you know, I learned a little bit from one guy, and then I learned something else from another guy, and so on and so forth. And, you know, and even at that, it took me a while. Yeah. You know, I'm not a natural anything. I got to work twice as hard as most guys to accomplish anything I want to do. So I always start out really slow, and then, you know, at some point the light comes on and I figure out how to do things. And now, and I like to simplify things. I think in spade casting, if a person can figure out where the anchor goes and how to sweep around your anchor and maintain your anchor, get your D-loop tight, come forward and stop in a comparably straight line, I think you're going to get a decent spade cast out of it. All these different kinds of spade casts, all those are setups. You know, a spade cast is basically a setup. It's a water-loaded cast, and the forward cast is like any other cast, pretty much. So, you know, you do a snap tee, it's a setup. You do a double spay, it's a setup. If you do a single spay, it's a setup. A snake roll is a setup to get your anchor into that key position to allow you to form your D loop, keep your D loop tight, and accelerate against the friction of the D loop, the weight of the D loop, and stop in a comparably straight line, you know, form your forward loop, and the thing just goes out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to make it really, really, complicated, but in the end, if you have tension on your D loop, you load the rod against that tension, you come forward in a fairly straight line and stop, you're going to get a forward cast out of it. Right. Yeah, there's some small stuff, of course. There's a lot of things you can do wrong, so mostly the things you talk about are the corrections.
Right, I know. I think what I do wrong, well, we can talk about that later, but I just want to get back to the year. So, first time you actually had two-handed spade rod was what year, roughly? When you first...
Well, the first time I tried to use a two-handed fly rod was probably somewhere around 87 or 88.
Oh, wow, okay. So, so go back to the 80s.
But having said that, there was nothing that happened that day that anybody would call a Spade Cast today, believe me.
Right, so, okay, so when do you start become where it's mostly spay?
Or
is that just...
Well, of course, the thing that made spade casting popular, started spade casting in North America, was Trey Combs' book, Fly Fishing for Steelhead.
Exactly.
Had a bunch of stuff in there about spade casting and spade casters and so on and so forth, mostly from northern Washington and British Columbia. And so that allowed the general public to know it could be done and that it was an asset.
So that's 87. So you kind of go and Trey's book. So when is the Spade Clave? What year is that?
That started in 2000.
2000, and then you took it over right in that period. There was like a year of Spade Clave.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Basically took it over in 2000.
Okay, so 2000s. Gotcha. All right.
So the last one was the 19th one in 2019.
Okay. All right, perfect. Well, we got a bunch of other stuff, but I think we can... anything else you want to add to the history of... I got a bunch of questions about the shop and stuff, but I think we can talk about that as we go. Let's do it. All right. So what do we got here for lines? This is the next thing. What's our... We got some sort of a Skagit with a head on it.
So this is simply a tip, a sinking tip. This is called a flow tip. Comes from the Airflow company, and Airflow flow tip. It's copied after the Mo tip, McCune, O'Donnell, and Ward tip from Rio. So they couldn't call it a Mo tip, so they called it a flow tip.
Oh man!
If one person does something pretty cool in this industry, it lasts about 5 minutes before somebody else is copying it and knocking it off.
Wow.
But the flow tip does have a certain advantage. Now this one here is 7.5 feet of T14 and 2.5 feet of intermediate. And it has this intermediate which is fairly large in diameter, and so it transitions the energy from the fat Skagit head to the skinny sinking tip probably a little more economically than, say, just a straight piece of T14 or T11 sinking tip line.
There you go.
So there you go.
That's it. So then
my interviewer here claims to be a newbie at the spade casting thing, so I'm putting on a fairly short tip that I'm going to put on this outfit. I'm going to take a 12.5 foot one off and put a 10 foot one on there, just so it'll make it easier on him, and it'll probably make it easier on his instructor as well. So
all right, perfect.
Rods, of course, always break. Well, the guy's playing the giantest fish in the world.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And even if it says, in the mashed part, it says Vibram right in the graphite, they're still going to say it broke.
I know. That's
the...
Yep.
Okay, so you want to do tips.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see what we got here.
one of the tips is when you take your rod apart, you get done fishing, and you put it in a rod reel case,
There you go.
it's like putting your money in the bank. This is a very inexpensive insurance policy. And when you take the rod out of the case, which I'm going to do here in a second, I'm going to put this rod case back in the waterproof bag, you know, so it can ride in the back of the boat here, and I don't have to dry it all out when I get home tonight.
That's a good tip, actually.
Yeah,
Yep.
Unfortunately,
it's a really good
that
tip.
Harding rod reel case is no longer made, but there are good rod reel cases out there. Sage makes some really good ones.
Okay.
And I think that's about the size of what's out there right now.
It's a great bag.
Okay, now, so I've taken my rod out of the rod reel case. Okay, and it's all folded up. I folded it all up when I put it away. So I'm going to unfold it. I'm going to bring the pieces around so the male and the female parts will go together easy. When you put a rod together, always put the two upper sections together first. I got to pull some line off this reel here, which only goes to prove me talking and doing something at the same time is difficult. So take the top two sections, put them together first, and the reason will become apparent here in a little bit. Put it together a little bit off center and twist it together.
Nice.
Then take those two pieces and sight down the guides. Now, if the guides are straight when you put your rod together and you're fishing, you're always looking down your rod when you're fishing. And if you see something that isn't straight anymore, you know you got a loose ferrule. So that's one of the main reasons that you put everything together straight in the beginning. That way you can tell easily, whether things are still connected properly, because if the guides are all lined up, they are connected properly. Now, the reason that we did that, started from the tip, is right here. Look at this. I got the rod handle in my hand, and I can sight right down that with the reel. Now, a couple things happen here. One of them being that if the guides are all straight, the line flows through the straight guides with less friction than it does around any kind of a bend. Of course, as you're casting and playing fish and all that kind of stuff like that, your rod's always bent anyway, but if the guides are lined up, they create less friction than if they're not lined up. So that, my friend, is tip number one.
That's a great one.
Tip number two, buy the good stuff. You deserve it. Always buy the best you can afford, because you get what you pay for, and if you pay for the good stuff, then you have it for years, and you get really used to using it, and you get really good with it. There's nothing better than something that's proven. The newest and the Gucciest stuff is not always proven. You know, a reel like this was spent, 1 year with this reel on the water. I know that it's bulletproof. In a year's fishing, I probably used this reel 60 days. And, which is probably more days than the average guy would use a reel in maybe 4 or 5 years. So if it says Sage on it, you can believe in it.
So Sage, and that's a 13-foot rod?
This is a 13-foot 7-weight Sage X.
Okay, Sage X. And then Sage.
And then this line here is a 525 grain Rio Max Skagit Short. Okay. So it has a lot of weight in a short length. Gotcha. Now, since your interviewer there is kind of professes to be a newbie at this spade casting thing, which I don't totally believe.
A newbie, I've been doing it for 10 years, but I've never had instruction other than videos.
Okay, well, who knows? Yeah. We'll see. We'll know pretty quick about
Yeah.
where it needs to go
Yeah.
from here.
And this is we're starting on my my tougher side. I'm better on the other side of the river. So this will be good. But it should be the same, right? I should be able to cast effectively. We'll see.
Well, yeah, there's some casts that work better for a right-hander on one side of the river than the other. You get over the other side, maybe you use a different cast.
Yeah.
But, you know, the best fly casters learn how to cast with either hand.
That's right.
So
That's right, and I haven't done that.
now, I got to admit, after having made that statement, that I'm not really good with my left hand. And the reason I'm not really good with my left hand is basically the same reason that most right-handers aren't good with their left hand, is because I'm just too lazy to practice.
That's right.
Because, you know, I could become ambidextrous if I just worked at it a lot harder.
Yeah, that's right.
The fly line wants to go in a straight line. The fly line will go in a straight line if you allow it to. The only reason the fly line will not go in a straight line is because you do not allow it to. So the human body is really neat because it has all these vertebrae in the neck, which allows a person to actually look and see what their D-loop is doing. And that works something like this. Follow your D-loop around, watch your cast through the entire cast. You'll automatically find out where the slack is. You'll automatically remove that slack and make everything work better.
So how's that work with your clients? You pretty much have just a set. I mean, you got a set guys that come back every year. Are you getting new clients all the time?
Well, people come and go.
Yeah.
People get divorces.
Right.
People move.
Yep.
People go to the hospital. You know, people have cancer. People have this. People have that. You know, on and on and on. So, you know, there's a certain amount of changeover.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, I'd like to tell you I got the warmest, fuzziest personality in the world, but I don't. You know, so,
yeah.
You know, I've been known to offend people.
Right. Well, that just goes to show you should
never try to use humor. See, it's always when I'm trying to use humor,
yeah,
or when I'm telling a story that I offend someone.
No kidding.
You know,
no kidding. That's funny.
They take it personal. They put themselves in the picture. They think the guide's chewing on them when they're just trying to, you know, they're not even in the picture at all. I'm just trying to give them an example.
Right.
You know, and suddenly, you know, they think they are the example. So.
Are there any guides? Are there many guides on this river? Like, there's only a couple or a few, right? Or are there a lot?
No, there's a half a dozen.
Half a dozen.
Really good ones.
Yeah.
Good fly fishing guides.
Do you know all those guys pretty well?
Oh yeah, I raised most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them have worked for me at one time or another.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, that's cool.
It's cool, except sometimes they're in your favorite starting spot.
That's right. Yeah, you teach.
They can see better in the morning because they're younger.
Yep. Yeah, so you teach. They're under you, and then they go off on their own, and then you turn around, and a year later they're in front of you.
Yeah. Well, I try and keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know whether they think so or not, or I don't even know if they're trying to keep it in perspective or whatever. But it doesn't really matter.
When you're fishing winter steelhead, how often do you get, you know, this time of year, do you get a fish where, you know, on the Deschutes, of course, you get crazy touches and stuff, but here,
same here.
Same here.
Yeah.
So you get some touches and
it's more difficult here though because you're fishing
heavier,
with a sinking tip line.
Yeah.
And you don't know whether you touched a rock
or the bottom.
Not. You know, it takes quite a bit of experience to really realize what the difference might be sometimes. But yeah, and what do you do when you get one of those?
Yep.
You throw exactly that same cast out there and see if he's still there. You know, a lot of times those fish will move upstream. So what I try to do is, you know, get out of the water, walk back upstream at least 30 feet, start all over again.
There you go.
You know, and you know, try and figure out where he went to or whether he's more in the mood or whatever. If it was a really good solid touch and I didn't sting him or something, I didn't jerk on him or something, then I might change flies, smaller, darker, more somber looking fly, and go do it again.
There you go.
You know, you guy might ask what the average is, but there isn't any. You know, sometimes fish just comes up and kind of smooches the fly to see what it is. Didn't taste like something he wanted to grab a hold of. He's done. He's wandering around, or he just settled back in the river and he's not interested in hitting anything. Sometimes they come up, you know, and they smooch the fly and think it's in their territory or whatever, and the fly gets away from them. They think maybe, if steelhead actually do think, and the next time the fly comes down into their territory again, they're ready to fight. They grab hard.
Right. So give them a little. Sometimes a nice little break doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I like to get right back after them.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to get back after them before they decide that they're just going to move up the river a quarter of a mile or something like that.
Yep. Okay.
You never know what they're going to do. They got a mind of their own.
Yeah.
If you want to know about steelhead, try and train your favorite house cat. They basically do whatever they want to do.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, you could drag a string past them, and they'll grab it 6 times in a row, and then they just lose interest in it. They're bored with it or whatever.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it again. And sometimes they just want to sleep. They're not going to grab the string no matter what.
So that's a pretty decent comparison, the cat to a steelhead. I've never heard that one. That's
it may or may not be.
Yeah.
It's theoretical. There's no way to prove any of this stuff really.
Yeah.
Except probably the provable rules are probably only 2. Actual provable, hard, written in stone kind of rules. You can't catch a fish unless you got your fly in the water.
That's right.
Now that's fairly provable. Even if you got the wrong fly in the wrong place and you're fishing it wrong, you probably have a better chance than a guy who doesn't have the fly in the water. Okay.
Yep.
The other thing is you can't catch a fish you can't reach. So good casting skills, just allow you to fish more river and be more consistent.
So out here, when we look across, there's that white tube on the other side. If you're fishing through this run, are you trying to cast towards, get close to that, or are you kind of hitting more middle of the river on this run?
That's something I'd never tell you with that camera turned on.
All right, that's true. Yeah, that's right. That's true.
I'm not going to give you away.
On your typical, let's just do a theoretical. So your typical run, how do you know where the deep slot is? Is it better? Do you just start?
Well, the fish aren't always in the deep slot.
Yeah. Or how do you know where the buckets are? I mean, I guess you just have to fish it. You got to cover the water if you don't know.
You got her, buddy.
You got to fish it.
It changes all the time, and
That's
the fish. Every fish is an individual critter.
Yeah.
I mean, some fish are big and brawly and ornery, and they're just ready to bite or fight no matter what.
Yeah.
Big bucks especially seem like they're grabbier than the hens are, and they're ready to impose their will on a territory, especially bigger fish are ready to run smaller fish out of their territory. But you remember all the kids you went to high school with?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, some of them were really energetic, and they really had a lot of energy, and they were aggressive in a lot of things that they did. Other people were just, passive.
Right.
Didn't have any muscle, didn't have any aggression, didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Slept through class every chance they had.
That's right. Which one were you more like?
Probably towards the first example.
Yeah, really.
I'm probably more aggressive.
Yep.
That's been one of my problems in life is I see life basically as like casting with a spey rod. Okay. Now, your average guy, if he's got a problem, he just figures that more muscle will cure it, which is usually exactly the wrong thing to do with a spey rod, is apply more muscle. And, I think that's why the gals learn it a little quicker, because they are more apt to try and learn technique and apply technique rather than overpower something. And life is kind of like that, My problem, if I had one, is that I just tried to overpower lots of stuff. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work, but it never made friends. It never made allies.
Really?
And being able to be real aggressive with steelhead, well, the guy that gets to the run first and gets through the run first probably catches fish that have been rested. That's probably an advantage. But, fishing all the water systematically and methodically is probably a good plan as well, which doesn't take a lot of aggressive. It just takes a bunch of stick to it. And it takes thinking about it. I think the best thing you can do with a steelhead is make your fly as predictable and vulnerable as possible. The more times you do the same thing over and over and over again, as long as your fly is at current speed or slower, You know, the more predictable you make the fly.
What do you mean by vulnerable? Like broadside, or what's your definition of
Either
vulnerable?
one.
Just making it
making it consistent.
Yeah.
Anything in nature that does things consistently the same all the time is vulnerable.
all right.
You go back to your house cat.
Yep.
And say you got 2 mice in the house, and one of them is, comes out of the wall at 2:30 every afternoon, runs across the sink board, munching around and all that kind of stuff. You know, by 3 o'clock, it runs across the living room. The cat's laying on the back of the couch, and he's watching the mouse all the time. He may not attack right then, or but after he sees this routine several times, he's going to set up an ambush.
Right.
Well, then the other mouse doesn't have a routine. It's in the attic one day, it's in the basement the next. It's, maybe it pulls the same routine as the first mouse, but only once. It's unpredictable. It's really hard to catch.
Mm-hmm.
So the cat is a lot less interested in the second mouse than the first one.
Yep.
I think you come down through a piece of water and your fly swinging at the same speed and same depth. When I say depth, I mean distance from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Every cast you come through there, these steelhead have tremendous eyesight. They might see that fly the first time when the closest it comes to them is 30, 40, 50 feet away.
Yeah.
But they're studying it. They're aware of things around them. If they weren't aware of things around them, they'd be dead.
Yeah.
And they probably say, oh yeah, well, there's something.
Right.
But the second time, it's maybe a little closer, but it's doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same speed. And then the next cast, it's 3 feet closer, doing exactly the same thing. And the fly is just coming to them.
Yeah.
So they're laying there, watching that fly come across. So by the time the fly gets in the strike zone, it's predictable.
Yeah.
And you've jacked them up. You've pre-sold your
Right.
product.
Right.
How many casts in a row.
Yeah.
And that's something I figured out by watching clientele.
Yeah.
If in my 30 years, I figure I've guided somewhere around 600 people for steelhead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I figure that 200 of them probably caught more than the other 400 of them. There's quite frankly, probably 400 of them didn't catch very much.
Right.
And they probably didn't have much of a chance. They didn't have the casting skills, they didn't have the wading skills, or they couldn't listen, or they were just ornery. They didn't want to do what the guide told them, and so on and so forth. Or they just weren't lucky.
Sure.
Maybe they only came one time, and it just was the time the river wasn't doing the right thing. There wasn't very many fish around. Maybe they cast great, but they just weren't lucky. But if you took the other 200, they probably all connected with a fish. Okay? So that's about 1/3 of the people that probably started, thinking about catching the steelhead with a fly, probably had whatever it took to be somewhat successful. Now, if you took that 200, there's probably 50 of them that caught more than the other 150. If you took that 50, there's probably 10 people that caught more than the other 40. Now, that's not exactly like the Navy SEAL deal, but it's getting kind of close to the same process, the process of elimination. Now, there's some guys that every time they got in my boat, I knew that I had 2 jobs. That was netting fish and taking pictures.
Really?
Okay?
Huh.
And every time.
Yeah. Crazy.
And it kind of became a routine that I asked myself, now why are these 10 people so much more productive than the other 590?
Why is that? Why was it?
Because the consistency that I was talking about.
Because they were consistent.
They cast, they're mechanical at going through a piece of water. They're able to pump these non-biting fish up. A steelhead doesn't have to bite. They're not really feeding or anything. You got to make it extremely easy for them by making your fly extremely predictable.
Yeah. So those are the best casters is one thing, those people, those 10, they were just very systematic and good waiter and just could cover the water.
And of course they were all experienced.
Yeah.
Because of their skills, they could already caught a bunch of steelhead when they came the first time.
Yep.
Probably.
Right.
But, on the other hand, they all thought that maybe I knew something about it. They didn't really realize that they were probably, their experience and their determination and whatever
Yeah.
really made me look good.
Huh. So now when you see me out there for the first run, what does it make you think of when we have the rest of the day ahead of us? Like
I didn't watch you.
Oh, okay, good. All right, good.
I went fishing.
All right, good. All right, we'll
So
see.
I have no idea.
All right.
Every time I did look down at what you were doing, looked to me like you were somewhere near in the game, but I wasn't standing alongside of you, saying, well, I think you should have done this, or I think you should do this, or something like this, or think about this, or whatever.
I felt good. Like normally I get out there and I think I get a little tired or something, and I pile up a bad cast every once in a while, or more than every once in a while.
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be perfect, but everybody's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And and you went to Sandy River Spade Clave and you watched all these magnificent casters put on, programs. Undoubtedly, you thought some of them were better than others, or they did something that was more interesting to you than the others did. But every one of those guys, no matter what you've seen, every one of those guys has their off and on time too. Not to the degree that a lot of other people do. And even when they're off, they're probably better than a lot of them. The average guy is, even when they're not as good as they want to be.
But they have their off days too, so that's good to know.
Well, that's right. Everybody has.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, you have, I don't know, some people call it biorhythms or whatever. Some days you're the goat and some days you're a god.
Yeah.
And what determines all of that is, what is it? Focus.
Yeah.
Maybe you just naturally feel better some days than you do on others. Maybe your neurons are firing better on some days than others. Maybe you got out there and you started out by getting a good night's sleep and so on and so forth, and being relaxed about what's going on and whatever. And maybe your guide made you feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
Right.
Whatever.
True.
Companionship makes a lot of difference and influence. The guy doesn't even realize it. Some guys stimulate you to do good, and some guys just make you grouchy all day, I notice myself, if I'm following somebody that's a really good caster, my casting picks up.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Everybody's a natural mimic. If I'm following somebody that just is having a heck of a hard time, sometimes I got to turn away from them, or my casting will start to mimic them to some degree.
So who was your, when you got into your mentor, did you have any mentors, any people that helped you, I guess if you could look at the Spade, or, you said you kind of taught yourself. What about just fly fishing? Did you pick that up yourself too?
Yeah, but I was really little. I grew up on a cattle ranch in northern Idaho that had a premium trout stream.
Oh, so you started young.
They had trout in it at times that were, they were lake run rainbows. I grew up in the Pondere Lake drainage where trout over 20 pounds were not that uncommon, especially in the 50s and 60s.
Jeez.
And so, I grew up, I didn't realize it was anything special. I just thought that's the way the world was, and so I grew up with a 1.5 miles of stream that was basically all private. There were 3 guys that came in there. They'd fished it since they were kids. My dad had to put up a bunch of locked gates and stuff because people would drive around our hay fields and do all kinds of stupid stuff.
Your dad was a farmer? Or your dad was a farmer? Or what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we raised cattle.
Okay.
And so he put up these locked gates, but he realized that these 3 guys, they fished together, and he realized that he could trust them, and he just gave them each a key and said, don't, the 3 of you guys can come here anytime you want to, do whatever you want, don't bring anybody with you. So I think kind of as gratitude, the older guy, kind of took me under his wing, showed me a little bit. I don't know whether he was an instructor or not, but, he started out, let me go down the stream first, go ahead of him, and then he'd come along behind me and catch all the fish. And about the time I was 12 or 14, I didn't work that good anymore, though.
Yeah. So your dad wasn't a big fly fisherman?
No, he was not. No.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you had some guy that just was...
Yeah, I was born with a fishing gene.
Yeah.
It was something I was interested in. The time that I'd pick up a Sears and Roebuck catalog and I'd automatically turn to the sporting goods section.
No kidding.
And I'd be into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just as something to do, something to learn about. I had one uncle, one of my dad's brothers was kind of into fly fishing, you know, and he'd send me some hooks and stuff.
Sure.
You know, my grandmother bought me a fly tying vise.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'd go raid the chicken coop or my mother's
Yeah.
embroidery box or whatever, you know, and
Nice.
that's how I started out tying flies. And, you know, the first flies that I tied, nobody would recognize them as flies except for me. They were just fuzz on the hook, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Wow. So when did the shop? When did that all come to be? When was the?
we opened our doors on our first store April 21st, 1981.
81. And what? How'd you get to that point? Go from, the whole shop. How did that you get that? Was that always the plan?
Started out with, you know, I started out, you know, growing up on a cattle ranch. You know, we had various kinds of equipment and that kind of stuff, and that seemed to be my forte was running tractors and different stuff, and so, you know, when I moved out, why, you know, I gravitated towards that kind of stuff. So by the time I got to Oregon, I was in construction and demolition, running heavy equipment, and you know, doing anything that people would pay money for. And I moved to Oregon. I came down. My folks sold a cattle ranch. I stayed up, you know, for a while longer in northern Idaho. I came down to visit them for Christmas in 1964. So I got to Oregon about 6 days in front of the 1964 flood.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dang.
So,
wow.
You know, there was so much work here after all the destruction from the big flood that I just moved here.
Oh, wow.
And I did flood damage control and that kind of stuff like that. And I went to work for the U.S. Forest Service running heavy equipment for them for a while.
So you ran an excavator or something like that?
Yeah, I ran caps and graders and backhoes and front end loaders and, you know, that kind of stuff like that. You know, I built roads, I helped build bridges, I, you know, maintained stuff, whatever the job was, whatever they needed some kind of a heavy equipment operator for, or dump truck driver or whatever, that's what I did. And then I don't know, I got tired of working for the government.
Yeah.
You know, and there wasn't much imagination involved in working for the government, so I wanted to do something different. And about that time, a friend of mine was in the scrap metal business, and we went around the Mount Hood National Forest because I'd seen all this obsolete logging equipment, you know, big yarders and, you know, big shovels and stuff.
Yep.
You know, and he says, you know, we could get all that stuff. He knew a lot of them logging outfits, and said we could get that stuff and cut it up for scrap, and there's probably money in that. So I think it peaked. I think before we even started, we had like 20 pieces, and the smallest was maybe 40 tons, and so we scrapped out all that stuff, made really good money at that, hit it just right. When we started out, prepared scrap was $18 a ton. By the time we got done with the first piece, price of prepared scrap had jumped to $65 a ton.
Jeez.
And we just made a killing on it. And then I went through a divorce.
Yeah.
And I got custody of my 4 children. And I couldn't have a job where I had to take anything home. So I went to work for an outfit, you know, in Portland that cut up ships, because I had that scrap metal background and knew how to use a cutting torch and all that stuff real good. And they went on strike. You know, I wasn't going to pack around some kind of a picket thing for a job like that. The woman that I'm with, I'd met her about that time. She had a house down on the coast that needed repair. She'd had it rented out, needed some repair. So we went down there and fixed it up, and they gave me a little while to think about things. And I thought, you know, I want to get into the sporting goods business. I want to do something I want to do rather than what I have to do. So I went to work for Larry Schoenborn. And
what year was that?
That would have been 1974.
Okay.
And I worked for Larry until 1979. And then a guy offered me a job building houses, which was really good for a while. And then we hit the 1979 80 recession.
Yep.
You know, and basically I lost a bundle there.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't get a job. You know, Everything
Wow.
in the
And you're supporting. You have 4 kids at home.
That's right.
And you're out of
Well,
work.
by that time I had 6 because Patty had 2.
Wow.
So we were raising 6 kids together.
Jeez. Was Pat? Oh yeah. And
That's
Patty.
the same Patty, the same
Okay.
gal I'm
Yeah.
still with, 40 some years later.
Wow.
And I said, I always wanted to have a fly fishing specialty shop. I think we're going to tie the first inventory of flies right here on this dining room table until we figure out what the hell to do with them.
Yep.
So, the kids got into it. Some of them did, some of them didn't, of course.
Uh-huh.
And, found a little building that was cheap. A friend of mine.
Where was that at? In
Right
Welch's?
alongside the In-Between Tavern right there in Welch's.
Oh, okay.
And In-Between Tavern doesn't exist anymore, but that building still does. It's a sushi place now.
Oh yeah, the sushi place.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we took that over. It was like $35 a month. There was a hole about 2 feet in diameter in the roof. It had been a Sears and Roebuck tip up. Went in there with the same guys that I'd been building houses with, and completely rebuilt that place on the inside and turned it into, open ceiling and all that kind of stuff like that. Put some insulation in it, all that stuff.
Huh.
And and that's where that.
How long were you there at that place though?
Yeah, we were there 5, 6 years.
5 years, and then you moved to the new where you're at now.
5 years. We were there 5 years. Then we moved up to the shopping center.
Oh, that's right. You're at the shopping center.
We moved up there in '86, and then we moved to the building we got now in 2000.
Yep. Oh, okay. So you've been there almost 20 years now.
Yeah, 19 years.
Huh.
Yeah.
What's been the hardest thing about the business over the years, the fly fishing business?
Oh, same as any business. Business is easy until you got to make a profit. The hardest thing to do in business is making a profit.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people work for the government, because they never figured out how to make a profit.
That's right.
That's the reason they work for non-profit organizations, because then all you got to do is get somebody to start some kind of a deal with people who donate to it, and then you don't have to make a profit.
That's right.
So all that stuff is easy.
Yeah. So how do you make a profit? What's the tip for somebody that wants to get into the fly fishing business and is struggling making a profit? Is there nothing?
I give the same tip to anybody who wants to get into anything. It's something I never did that I really regretted. Go to college.
Really?
Get an education.
No kidding.
Yeah, get with people that know something about what goes on, how to avoid mistakes and that kind of stuff. I've wasted as much money as I've made just through stupid mistakes.
Sure. So you think if you would have gone to college and got a business degree, that'd be different now? Or that would have helped you?
Oh, I have no doubt about it.
Yeah.
A guy's got an education, you can talk to bankers and that kind of stuff a lot different.
That's right.
You get an education on how to assess profits and losses and that kind of stuff. I got into business with a high school education.
Yeah.
I was really good in sciences and that kind of stuff like that when I went to school, but I never studied business.
No.
My dad did okay, but he never made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he knew how to hang on to it, though.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the agricultural gene, and I didn't get the hanging on the money.
No, you got the fishing gene.
Either, so.
You got the fishing gene.
Yeah. So.
That's cool. Oh, that's quite a story. I didn't realize you guys have been so many shops over the year. Well, you're a few, yeah.
Well, I figure it this way. I could have spent a bunch of money getting an education.
Yeah.
Or I could have wasted 3 times as much money by not getting an education. I tell everybody that comes to work for me, young guys, want to be a fishing guide or something. Yeah, that's great. Make that decision after you get an education.
Yeah.
Because a blue-collar guy in this era
doesn't happen.
You're dead meat.
No, yeah, it's a tough time.
You gotta have some papers that tell somebody that you know something about what they need.
Yeah. So the person, if they want to get into a fly shop or they want to start the fly, I'm thinking of who I'm thinking of is Jason at the Portland Fly Shop, and I'm not sure what his background is, but I think he was working at Northwest Outfitters, right? The fly shop.
Yeah, he's a likable guy. I don't know much about Jason, but
I don't either. But
but he's a likable guy.
Yeah,
I take to Jason. He seems like he's a smart guy.
Yep.
And I think he's probably got a natural work ethic
and
that kind of stuff. I don't know him, but I would bet that he's a pretty reliable guy.
Yep. Oh yeah, I bet he is too.
What advice would I give him?
But he's trying to get going, right? He's got a new shop. I mean,
yeah, he is, and maybe he'll make it.
And there were a lot of shops. So it was the crash. The 2008 was it that was bad. That was hard on some of the shops. Yeah.
And we were flying high. We were making, I was taking, a destination vacation every quarter.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'd go to Belize or we'd go to, we'd go someplace.
Right.
And I've been all over fly fishing because of that.
Yeah.
And, manufacturers loved us. Everybody loved us.
Yep.
It makes a lot of difference whether you can pay your bills on time as whether people love you.
That's right. That's right.
And it does. I mean, you either got to have a backer.
Yeah.
Now, we started out with nothing.
Right. Yeah, you just built your own.
And our business is built on guts.
That's right.
Basically.
Yeah.
And what advice would I give a young guy?
That's a tough question. It is.
It is, but it still comes.
Oh, here's one for you. Think about that a little bit. What advice would you give to yourself when you were 25? If you think back, I'm not sure where you were at when you were 25.
No, by the time I was 25, I already had a couple of kids.
Really? So do you have any advice for that person?
Oh, Jesus. That gets into all kinds of political and
does it? Okay, we don't.
Stuff and all that stuff.
We don't have to go there then.
But, probably the first and most important decision after getting an education that you'll ever, that you'll ever come up against is be careful who you sleep with.
Oh.
Be careful who you marry.
Right.
Be careful that kind of relationships that you make, because if you make it wrong, it'll devastate you.
So that's a good segue, because I wanted to ask you about Patty, who 40 years.
40-some
years. How'd you get lucky enough to run? Because you guys have a really, she comes with you. I mean, she's been there by your side the whole time, right? How did you find such an amazing person?
I didn't. She did it all.
Did she?
Yeah. Even for a while, even when she was making herself convenient, I couldn't really see her that much. I was looking for something flashy with high heels and lipstick and all that kind of stuff, which is exactly what got me the first one.
No kidding. No kidding.
So,
right.
I don't necessarily need all of that stuff out there.
Yeah.
And that's as far as I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
But the advice is the same.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get yourself tied up, which everybody eventually does, make sure first and foremost that there's somebody that's reliable. That they're actually on your side.
Right.
So don't fight too hard to get yourself in trouble.
Gosh, all right. All right. Well, what do you think? You want to roll?
Yeah.
Roll down. Kind of the river today. Have we missed anything as far as the Sandy River fishing, steelhead wise? We've
only about 97.3%.
Yeah, this is.
But how are you going to tell it all?
This has been awesome. That's right. Yeah, we've.
And would you if you could?
No, yeah, we got the important stuff in. But it's been good. Yeah, there's been a couple fish out there, and it's been awesome. I mean, the tips you gave me on the standing up straight, that was huge, and then and relaxing. That might be the best tip that I haven't really talked about much, but relaxing. I mean, that's what happens. You get stiff, and then you start. So I'm gonna remember those for sure. Those are the big ones, but for fishing wise, we covered. It's basically you got the rod. We covered that, the line, the flies, the leader tippet. You do about a 3-foot leader of 20-pound. Is that what?
Yeah, 20-pound fluorocarbon is what we're using today. That's a little heavier than what I normally use for steelhead fishing.
Yep.
But when I went to British Columbia, I fished the Dean River, and the guides automatically they just put on 4 foot of 20-pound test.
Yeah.
20-pound
That's
test. And
yep. Those are big fish.
Yeah, some of them are.
Yeah.
They all pull hard.
Yeah.
So do these. I find the Dean River in many ways comparable to the Sandy River here in Oregon, except the Dean where I was fishing it is a lot faster, has a lot more velocity.
Oh, okay. So how are you just using longer T14s and more weight?
Fish hold in faster water
on
the Dean than they do in this. Because they have to, I think.
Yeah.
And we were right above tide water as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're hot.
So, yeah, every fish that I caught there had long tail sea lice on it.
Yep. All right. Well, let's see.
And I've only caught one steelhead on this riverhead sea lice.
No kidding.
And that was 20 miles upstream of here.
Wow.
Yeah, that fish was really moving.
Where's
fast.
that? Is that up above Marmot?
It was just right below Alder Creek.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sea lice. That's always good to see. Yeah, I guess that's more of a coastal thing.
Yeah, sea lice apparently drop off a fish about 48 hours after they're in fresh water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what I heard. That's not a scientific statement.
Sure.
But that's what I heard.
I'll fact check it and. No, it's been good. I think the canyon. That's what I forget about. I mean, I've been down here many times, but it's been a while, and this is amazing. This is beautiful. I mean, this is a scenic, like you said, wild and scenic, right?
This is the oldest designated wild and scenic section of any river in the state of Oregon. This is the original one in this state, made so by state law. That state law became the pattern for the Oregon Omnibus River Act, which also became the pattern for the Federal Omnibus River Act. So,
Oh wow!
so that legal stuff that happened there has been used as a pattern for making rivers across the United States wild and scenic and protecting them and keeping them in good shape.
Yeah. That's.
Oregonians have been at the forefront of a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't hurt anything to take care of things.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. What else we got? So we covered the Larry's, the Spade Clave a little bit. We got some tips, casting, retirement. Did we cover your retirement plan? It's
You're looking at
yeah, that's it. This is the retirement plan. This is it. So
this is a retirement plan, and the one thing about fly fishing, it's something that a person can do into their old age.
yeah,
And it keeps a person young. You stay active, your mind's active, your body's active, you're feeling good about things. I think it just makes you live longer.
yeah.
Rowing boats, wading big strong rivers.
What's been your what's one of your vices?
Vices?
Yeah, do you have a vice?
I got a fly time vice.
You know, I mean, because that's look like you're healthy. You don't look like a person that does a lot of bad stuff. Do you have any?
Oh, I've had my days,
yeah.
just like anybody else.
What about you? Do you alcohol? Is that something you?
Well, I never became an alcoholic.
No,
that's what
but you're not against drinking alcohol or booze.
Not against anything.
Yeah, all right.
But
I'm trying to get your secret because when I look at you, I think you're probably maybe 60, 65, maybe. But
you probably better get your glasses adjusted.
I'll tell you, the thing we got into today, I mean, that was, I mean, you were pushing off a slimy rock that was not an easy, I know because I was on the rock. Okay, so I do have one big one. So the 222, I asked and then we talked about some of it, but your top 2 flies, top 2 tips, and top 2 resources. So are the flies we're using, do you have 2 top flies? If you had to pick for Sandy River Steelhead, you're just kind of the good ones you go?
Well, for this time of year, for Steelhead and Chinooks combined,
yeah,
it's just awful hard to beat a prom dress.
Oh, right.
And that's what both of your fish came to.
Yep.
Was a blue prom dress, which is a mighty good thing to be using.
Yep. Just yep.
There's a zillion different things that a steelhead or a salmon would bite, but
yeah.
Blue flashy one this time of year is a pretty good bet.
And what's the blue flashy this time of year? Just because it's a little bit clearer and
just because it works.
It works. Well, what's another one that would work other than that?
Oh, I've caught basically what I'm fishing for today is anything that bites, but I've been more slanting my own rigging to Chinooks. I always like big fish. I like fish that pull backing off a reel.
Yeah.
And almost any of these steelhead that'll be in here this time of year pull backing, plenty of backing off the reel too. But Chinooks are just bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And they're more novel. A lot of guys don't realize you can catch Chinooks in the lower 48.
Right, no kidding.
Most people spend a lot of money and go to Alaska.
That's right.
And don't realize there's Chinooks right in their own backyard. Yeah. They think that, the common dictum is that you got to use bait to get them.
And you can catch them on flies.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's another thing that I think a lot of people, even though they know they're here, they don't think they'll take flies.
That's right. Well, when I started out around here, people didn't believe you could take winter steelhead with a fly.
That's
now
true.
Now it's commonly
That's
known.
right. That's true. Yep.
You know, half the guys that said it couldn't be done are now claiming they invented it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
right.
there you go.
That's right. All right. And how about think of a couple of tips? You've given me a bunch of tips. Any other just general steelhead tips? Anything you could think of that pop of your head that might be good for somebody that wants to get their first?
Well, just, you want to fish your fly. If you could have everything,
Yeah.
and you could do everything perfectly, you'd fish your fly about a foot to 18 inches off the bottom.
Oh, there you go.
At current speed or slower. Anything that comes to a fish at current speed or slower, they don't mind that. They're pretty happy about it. A lot of times they just up and eat it.
Yeah.
Anything that comes downstream at them faster than the current is the enemy. And I think it's because these fish been living out in the Pacific Ocean with orcas and salmon sharks and all kinds of things that think that steelhead are pretty tasty.
Right.
So if if it's traveling at a certain speed, it's something to eat. And if it's traveling at a different speed, it's something that might eat them. So they take evasive actions. I've seen steelhead panic because a fly came to them too fast and have little tiny flies run great big steelhead clear out of a pool.
Huh. And the other tip I was going to say you told me about earlier was what do you call your cast? That big men, kind of it's like a.
So you turn the tip of your line parallel to the current. Therefore, it has the least amount of frontal area to the current, has the least amount of drag. It is relatively impossible to have the fly come to the fish faster than the current that way, and it gets deeper and does everything better.
Yeah, it definitely gets deeper. What about?
Incidentally, I didn't let him film that. See, so
no.
In order to learn that trick, you got to come to me.
That's right. Yeah, we're not releasing all the secrets here on today, so I'll have links to all your information in the show notes, so you can connect with you for the next guide trip. What about resource? So your website is a resource. What would you recommend? Do you have a couple of good resources for steelhead that are out there that might not be necessarily your own?
There's several books that are relevant. The best book ever written on the subject, I think, is Steelhead Fly Fishing by Trey Combs.
Yeah.
I'm only suspicious that it's in print. I don't know if it's even in print currently.
Right.
Passion for Steelhead by Deck Hogan is a good read.
Yep.
There's any number of things out there. Any video by Todd Moen, even though none of them are necessarily a tutorial.
Yeah.
They'll let you know what's going on because they're all real. I know a lot of the guys that have started in things, and you look at that stuff. It's not only immensely interesting to watch, but it's immensely insightful in how the whole situation works as well.
This Moen stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are amazing.
A lot of different guys have been involved in it.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's see what else. I think that's about it. What about the next 6 to 12 months? Anything new? You got some trips going? Anything that you want to share that you got coming up?
Well, for the next until about the 20th of June, I'm going to be in some canyon somewhere here around the Willamette Valley, hunting for steelhead and chinooks.
Okay.
And then the last week in June, first week in July, I'm going to be in the Sea of Cortez chasing dorados and roosterfish and that kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come back. Who knows what I'm going to do in July? I haven't figured it out yet.
When do you start fishing when do you start guiding them?
I'll start my trips on these shoots 1st of August and end up the end of October. And that season it's probably 2/3 booked, I suppose.
Really?
There's openings there.
Okay.
And,
all right. And if they want to find openings, the website?
Oh, yeah.
Flyfishusa.com?
Flyfishusa.com.
All right.
And there's a link there called Guide Trips. Got a drop-down menu. You can take a look at the calendar and all the different kinds of trips that we do and all that stuff.
All right. Well, I think that's about all I have for you. I want to thank you for the trip. I appreciate you taking me. I mean,
from starting out this morning, buying me breakfast and driving me here and everything. I appreciate the time, and hopefully we can get on, do another trip down the line. I hope,
Sure.
It's crazy. It's been all these years that we haven't really crossed paths either too much, So it's kind of, I think that's the great thing about it, is that you can always start a friendship whenever, right? It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Well, we started one today.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate it. And anybody that connects with me, I'll send them your way and let them know for sure. And I want to pick up one of these lines too, so you have to hook me up there and all.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. All right. See ya.